And welcome to the Midday Show. I am Jeff Everett. He is Mark Messina.
And he is annoying.
I have the wrong graphic up. There we go. It's Veterans Day. We're going to give a home-hearted salute to veterans. Before we do that, NCAA payments, women's athletics, a really neat conversation about just women athletics. Who better to do that than two grown males? Mark, how are you feeling today?
I'm annoyed with you. Here, I'm going to start.
Happy Veterans Day.
Yes, happy Veterans Day.
A salute to all the veterans out there. You don't want to ignore the veterans, are you? Or did you want to tell the story? Was the story you were going to tell more important than the veterans?
We're getting there. I'm just going to tell people why I'm annoyed with you, and partially because I'm jealous because it was funny. You and I were having a discussion pre-show, as we often do, and we disagreed, as we often do.
Yes.
And right while you said, "Welcome to the Midday Show," and for 2 seconds, I turned to the screen and I was like, "Wait, are we ready?" And then you started laughing and you had me, and it was really funny, but I felt like a buffoon for just a moment. So that's why I'm annoyed.
I love that after 3 years, this is what it took to make you feel like a buffoon.
Just today. Yeah. That's what it did today.
Okay.
Earlier when I got in, I carried stuff. I had to make a couple trips because I remembered to bring your cherry Coke today.
You did, yes.
And well, that one I just bought for you this morning because the other ones weren't cold. But yeah, then I sat there and I ate. I was all ready to go, and then I was like, "Where's my computer?" And I left it in my car, and I had to go make another trip through the rain to get my computer. So yeah, buffoonery is doing really well. It's barely noon.
Happy Veterans Day. Do you have some veterans in your life, like in your family history?
On my
I've never asked you before.
Ex's side, the whole family's veterans.
Okay.
Her dad went to Annapolis. I should know this. His dad was like a lifelong military guy. I don't know if he went to Annapolis or not.
That's how she ended up living overseas?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And it's just whenever you talk to someone who's dad, I think her dad did 30 years or 29 and a half years or whatever it is. She was born in Alaska.
Okay.
Her brother, no, sorry, I take that back. She was born in England.
Okay.
Spent some of her time in Alaska on her trips through. Her brother was born in Virginia Beach. So she was born on foreign soil on a U.S. naval base. Her brother was born on U.S. soil, but then they went Alaska, Japan, Korea, like all these places, did a couple stops in Maryland because that's where the Navy's headquartered and depending on what his job was. But there are lots of reference points. Like I talked to you about the 80s and you don't get it because you were born in the 80s and it was before your time. I'll talk about, shows like Happy Days and, Fame and things like that a lot of us either saw or saw in reruns a lot. Mm-hmm. And her standard answer was, I probably wasn't in the country then.
Yeah.
And she's like, they weren't showing reruns of Three's Company in Korea.
Right.
Like, I can imagine.
No, it makes sense.
I never realized, and I've talked about this multiple times in the past, the Veterans Day, we always salute the veterans. And obviously that seems like an incredibly dumb statement. But the sacrifices that the families make is really, really, when my ex first came here, one of the first stories that I always tell, I was coming up for a wedding. Okay. She was coming for a wedding. We breeze into town on Friday afternoon so I can pick up my tux and make sure it fits I walk in this place and the lady says, "Hi, Mark." And I said, "Hey, how are you?" And we start talking. She sized me up and everything's good because there's nothing like getting a tux, putting on your tux the day before a wedding. It doesn't fit.
Sure.
And so we get in the car and my ex says, "Well, who was that?" And I said, "Oh, it was so-and-so's wife." Sorry, take that. It was so-and-so's mom.
Okay.
And she said, "Well, who's that?" And I was like, "Oh, let me think. He was on my bowling team in like 4th grade." And the whole fascination to her of that you can walk into a store and you see someone that you haven't seen in 20 years and you know who they are and they talk because you have this, because she said, I never lived anywhere more than 2 years or 18 months or 9 months or whatever. They talk about putting stuff in storage that they loved because they were at Virginia Beach or in Alaska or somewhere stateside. and then they were going overseas, and then they come back and they're all excited to pull their stuff out. And they're like, none of it fits anymore. It was 2 years ago. My bike's too small. The toys I played with, I don't want anymore.
Right.
So you're like, you're all excited to open this up, and then you're like, I was a little kid then.
Right.
I was 8. Now I'm 10. That stuff's not cool anymore.
Right.
So it is what the families do, not just the servicemen who oftentimes put their life on the line, but the sacrifices that the families make is really underappreciated.
Yeah. I fell into, not to completely change the subject, I did fall into Saving Private Ryan last night. It just kept coming up on my feed. And it is, it's not something that I intentionally do, but I always find myself like early November, I end up watching either clips of it or the movie of it. And so I don't know. Obviously, it's not like a holiday where it's not like Christmas where it's like all these Christmas movies and everything else. Like it's not like Veterans Day movies and like people gather around and watch them. But if you do get the chance, it is. I mean, the opening scene of Saving Private Ryan, the message, just kind of the realism of it. It definitely does hit home, and it makes Veterans Day. I don't want to using the word real probably isn't the right word, but it does make you appreciate it, and it certainly gives the day more of an aura. If you're able to do it. So
I'm trying to think what other war movies really.
I think I just told you, I just watched the new one on Netflix. And this won't necessarily work for our Veterans Day, but I just watched the All Quiet on the Western Front.
Oh yeah.
The remake. And that was very, very well done. Anybody who enjoys war movies, that one it's tough to watch. There's some things in it that are very similar to the opening scenes of Saving Private Ryan, like very vitriol, very right in your face. But it was incredibly well done. I'm glad I watched it.
I mean, 1917 was very well done too,
Yeah.
but again, it doesn't for our, there's nobody here that fought in World War I. So,
Sure.
it's, yes.
We'll leave it at that. So happy Veterans Day. Thank you to everybody who is a veteran. Thank you to Weis Markets for being the title sponsor of the Midday Show. Be sure to go there to get your grocery rewards, your gas rewards. How have you been this week?
Oh my God, yes.
I love your smile when I ask you and you get this immediate, like, of course I've been there. What kind of ridiculous
in Montoursville, Weis's and Walmart are like they almost share a parking lot.
Yeah.
There's a little gap in between. I'm just in both of them all the time.
Yeah. I don't want to speak too far.
They're wonderful places.
Do you have shopping, before we get into today's main topic, do you have places that you like avoid when it comes to shopping, or it's just like you will go to 3 different places before you go to this one? That is Walmart for me.
Really?
Yeah.
I love Walmart.
Yeah, I know. See, I think a lot of people do. There's something about Walmart where like this is an example. I'll go get groceries, right? Like I'll need to get something for the house, and I will need to like get a gift. And I will go to the grocery store. I will go to like Ace, and then I'll go get a gift somewhere else. And I could have just gone to Walmart and got it done in like 30 minutes, but I just refuse to I don't know. Like, it's just not where
Why
I go
is that?
to get stuff. I don't know. I don't know what it is. I think
I know what it is. You have an attitude problem.
it might be. Well, this is the other part of it too. So we got a Walmart when I was a kid. We got this big Walmart up, and that was like everybody had to go to Walmart. So I think in my mind, I have this block of kind of like, oh, Walmart, like we're going to Walmart. So now that I live in a little bit of a bigger place, there's all these options and all these different places I could go. And so I think I'm just like, no Walmart, like I'm not doing it.
I think for me, for a lot of people that like it, whether it's because I kind of know where everything is,
yeah,
especially all the stuff that I want.
Mm-hmm.
And,
it helps too that you live in Montoursville.
Yeah.
I've never lived in Montoursville. I know it's like not that far away, but I think because like for me to go to Walmart, it would have been like a trip. Like
it's right there.
So like if I'm gonna take the trip and I'm gonna do it, it's like, is Walmart really where I want to go? Probably not. So I don't.
And to a degree, I mean, for people in Montoursville, like Walmart's our sporting goods store. So
I get it.
When my kid, when it's baseball starts in 2 hours and he can't find his batting gloves,
that's where you go.
Then you just go to Walmart, and because I know where everything is,
so
you just breeze in and breeze out.
See, that's okay. The breeze in and breeze out part, I may disagree with you a little bit on.
Not if you know where you're going.
Okay. Because that lot can be packed from time to
Well,
time.
if you go on Black Friday,
I'm just saying.
This is one of the things I always learn. On Black Friday, you fly. They got every register open.
Mm-hmm.
It's busy.
I'm good.
But
I'm glad. You made me feel better. You made me feel better about Walmart. I'm not saying I'll go, but you made me feel better about it.
They should advertise with us now.
For the they can't advertise for the almost Emmy nominated, but they could advertise for the soon to be.
There you go. There you go.
We can look into it. You brought up an interesting conversation. This is about paying students. It's about paying athletes. But what we're eventually going to get to is kind of the divide in women athletics that NIL is creating. For those who don't know, NIL is name, image, and likeness. Essentially, what the NCAA did is instead of paying athletes themselves, they came out and said other people are allowed to pay athletes for their name.
Go get what you can get.
Yes. We can start there. I think personally, I pound this drum to anybody who will listen. For anybody who thinks the NCAA is paying athletes, they are not. They still aren't. They found a way to get around it without having to reach into their checkbooks to do it. And I vehemently disagree with this. I'm for the name, image, and likeness. I think athletes should be able to go and do sponsorships and marketing and all that stuff. I would argue still the NCAA is making a ton of money off of these kids, and they are not having to pay them a dime.
All right. Well, I got the not the story idea. I saw the story and I thought it was interesting.
Yes.
There is a not her. I just lost the girl's name.
It was a coach or it was an athlete?
Okay, there's a coach. I think I'm one click away. Her last name is Dunn. Now I'm one click away. Yeah. Okay, there's a girl who is a gymnast at LSU. And she, through her NIL deals, and I think with Instagram and stuff like that, Louisiana State, Olivia Dunn. So if you want to Google Olivia Dunn, LSU gymnast, she is as you can imagine, she is a cute little blonde, 20-year-old college girl who says, the one report says $2 million she made last year. She said, from what I read, 7 figures. She confirmed that it was 7 figures. Okay. So they're not that far off. Whether it's 1 million, 2 million, but she's a 20-year-old college kid who just made 7 figures.
Sure.
And they say racy. I see here's one. She's on the beach. Mm-hmm. I don't like. It's certainly far from pornographic. Mm-hmm. And Tara Vandermeer, who is the women's coach at Stanford, who's been the women's coach at Stanford for 100 years. Women's basketball. Came out and said, this is a step back for women's athletics. We want to be seen as athletes. We want to be seen as this. But here she is in a bathing suit to make money. The girl came back with, there is no professional gymnastics for me. This is it. This is my sport. She's obviously not lazy. You can't be a Division I SEC gymnast and not be dedicated and work hard.
Right. And
she's just using the system to her advantage. And there's always that. It seems to be so much now. Women are so much more visualized. What word am I looking for? How women look is so much more important in society than how men look.
I think when it comes to your ability to make money, yes.
And no, not that, as Carrie and I had this discussion yesterday, because we talked about the story a little bit. Brad Pitt is Brad Pitt because he looks like Brad Pitt. So is George Clooney. Like, they're talented people, don't get me wrong, but the sexualization of women is way more than the sexualization of men. But it always seems like that the women who aren't sexualized are very, very bitter about the women who are.
Okay.
And I've always wondered, those women, like Tara Vandermeer is obviously very smart. Mm-hmm. She's the head women's coach at Stanford. She might be the winning. Did she pass Pat Summitt? She might be the winningest women's college coach in history.
Okay.
So did she feel bad for the women who weren't as smart as she was? Like, everyone has their gifts, and this girl's using her God-given gifts to make really good money, and people are poo-pooing it.
I think there's two things, having never meeting and not knowing the women's head coach for Stanford. The two things that came to mind as you were speaking. The first one is, I would imagine she's been at Stanford for decades. Decades. And so I think the challenge for her is that there's an ambition and a drive there that she has put in for 25, 30 something years. And now, as we move into this age of NIL and people, content creators making money, I can imagine her frustration, not so much that she is not making the money. I think her frustration is coming from the idea of, I have dedicated my life to trying to move the bar for women. Not just in college, not just in athletics, but just like the overall movement for women and their rights and what they're able to fight for. And then for her to see somebody else basically have to compete their NIL money with a quarterback's NIL money, and the only way for her to do that is to take pictures in bathing suits, I can see how for her that would be incredibly frustrating.
So you're saying it's not that she did it, it's the fact that she has to do it differently than the men.
I think the biggest, because again, I don't know how they do it. The NCAA always just kinds of finds a way to be the problem, but no one ever states that they're the problem. So what I mean by this is, the NCAA came out and they said you can make money off of your name, image, and likeness. And they gave almost no rules. Like, there was no rules to it. There was no like inkling or like kind of, we're going to step our way into this. They just dropped it and everyone was supposed to figure it out. One of the things that came with this that nobody considered is there's a little bit of a Title IX discrepancy with it, because men are going to be able to make way more money in NIL, and they're going to be able to make it in different ways than women athletes in the NCAA and what they have to do to get their NIL deals. The example I gave to you the other day is the number one player in the ACC is Armando Bacot. Big dude,
basketball,
funny
number
guy.
one basketball player.
Yep, big dude, funny guy. Certainly not like your typical swimsuit model, I think is the fairest way to put it.
As opposed to us.
Correct. Armando is just under 7 digits, according to a post I saw, in NIL money. So sponsorships, speaking, different things. If Armando Bacot had to figure out a way to make NIL money, but he had to do it the way that the LSU gymnast does, I don't know if he would make 6 digits. And so I think if you're the coach for Stanford, or if you're anybody that is trying to like move the bar for women's rights, I would imagine it is unbelievably frustrating watching these men athletes get 7 digits, not taking off a single piece of clothing, right? And now you have these women athletes that are realizing like, well, the money's there for me too. I just got to go get it differently. And maybe it means posting a swimsuit picture on my. And so I think that is, I could see how that would be disheartening for the coaches.
I get what you're saying, but let me take it from this aspect. You picked the best prospect. Is he a freshman or he's a high school senior?
Who's that?
The kid you just said.
Armando Bacot was the player of the year last year. He's going to be a senior at North Carolina.
Okay.
This year is his senior year at North Carolina.
He didn't go to the league?
Nope.
Okay. So anyway, he is the, what do you say was the NCAA player of the year?
He was the ACC player of the year.
Okay. Well, this girl, I don't even know if she's any good. She's on the LSU gymnastics team.
Right.
So it's also an aspect of this guy's a I mean, you could take the devil's advocate and say, give me a guy who's 8th on the third man off the bench at NC State or at some mediocre at Purdue.
Sure.
And does this guy have a chance to make 7 figures in NIL?
So your point then is that there's different routes for different people, regardless
to
of
success. Gender. Absolutely.
What's funny about that is I think it says more about if you're a college athlete right now, because I said to you, if you're a good looking person right now and you can't make money, you're just stupid. Like that's between all the apps and all the platforms and all the social media creation, and everything else. I mean, if you are a good-looking person and you cannot turn the phone around on yourself and make money, you are missing the boat. I can't help you. You have nobody to complain to. With that being said, I think one of the things with college athletes right now is it's not the best looking athletes, it's not the best performing athletes, it's the most aware athletes. If you're a college athlete right now and you are aware of your strength, am I funny? Am I good looking? Am I really good at it? Right? Like, what is the thing? Is there a right that I can stand up for? Right? Is there like a social cause that I can like step up and be the leader for? If you're a college athlete and you recognize your strength, you're in. Like, you're going to make money. So, like, does being good looking help? Absolutely. Does being funny help? Yes. Does being the best help? Yes. But you can kind of find your avenue if you're willing to recognize, you know what? I'm not the best looking, but I'm really good at this. I'm not the funniest, but I'm really good. Like, you just have to figure out what it is.
I get that. And when, Tara Vandermeer was there in the 80s, so I'm going to guess that she's 70 years old. It's almost like, this is the way I look at it. It would be like some 70-year-old financial advisor who's put his money in dividend producing stocks, and I went to school and I would do this, and now I got some kid who barely shaves, showers once a week, sits around in his underwear and a flannel and trades crypto, and he's making as much money as I do. And I'm mad because I don't approve of the way he did it. Well, then, I mean, tough.
Do you think she's mad at Dunn, or do you think she's mad at what Dunn has to do?
I think she's mad at Dunn. I think she's mad at what Dunn represents.
Mad at Dunn.
Yes.
Well, you just said there, what Dunn represents.
I think what I think she feels like, and the women's livers feel like, that those those females that exploit their looks for money are cheapening the female agenda. And I don't see how a 20-year-old kid who I would look at her, if God could look down on this girl at 19 and say, here's all you have to do as an LSU gymnast. You need to take some pictures of yourself. I mean, you're on the beach anyway. Like, you have an Instagram page, because every teenager does. All you need to do, and you're going to make $2 million next year. I tell her she's stupid if she didn't, just like you did. You're like, if you're good looking, you're not making money. She's making $2 million, and she's being criticized for it.
Yeah, I guess where our gap is what are they actually criticizing, right? And so if anybody, like, let's take the Stanford coach out of it. If you and I went and wanted to speak up, right, for that, this is bad for women's athletics, aren't we going to end up condemning the individuals benefiting from it no matter what we say?
Yeah.
Even if we're not trying to?
I think one of the things that I've had this discussion so many times, and when you just get about athletics, what makes it unfair and this is just the way life is. The male athletic body is what females find incredibly attractive.
It was the summer of the dad bod. That's what I was told.
Well, in general, nobody looks at Dwayne Johnson and says, God, he's ugly, because he's big and strong and fit.
Okay.
Big and strong and fit is a look that always, most men, from what we've been seeing, there's a docile, petite, almost femininity that a 6'2", 210-pound power forward doesn't have.
Okay.
So women can watch an NFL game or an NBA game or whatever and see guys that they find attractive all over the field. Guys watch a basketball game where 8 out of the 10 women on the court are over 6 feet tall, and it's just not the same.
But so one of the only good things about NIL, in my opinion, so obviously it's people being allowed to profit off of their identity. That's the best part. One of the things directly underneath it, though, is that NIL doesn't really discriminate. And what I mean by that is that there are a lot of people that are not knockouts athletically, not knockouts attractiveness, right? Like they're not all that funny. Like you just have to find your niche and you can benefit from it. So here's my thing is like, if we're going to call out, if it's on the idea that only good-looking people can be called out for making NIL, I think that's unbelievably unfair.
Of course it is.
Okay. So I'm trying to think, like when you said, like most of the conversation you're having around this though is based around attractiveness. And I think if you go and you look at like the top influencers in college sports, and then you said to somebody like rank the most attractive athletes in college sports, I don't think they would align necessarily. I think there'd be some outliers isn't the right word, but there would be some correlation, but it would not be like a 10 for 10 down the line.
No, and I get that, but that's why this girl was called out.
Because, okay, from the coach at Stanford, she was called out because of her good looks.
I mean, essentially, because the coach of Stanford, listen, if she was funny and she was telling knock-knock jokes, making $2 million, the coach of Stanford wouldn't have said she set back women's athletics.
I agree.
She only said she set it back is because she's playing off her good look. She is Anna Kournikova.
So you don't see this.
Are you old enough to remember who Anna Kournikova was?
Yeah, I remember Anna Kournikova.
Just checking.
Did you know that her little brother, like he was in a Netflix documentary called The Short Game? When he was like 6, 7, 8, he was the #1 golfer in the world at his age. Now I don't know where he's now. I mean, now he would be going into his teens. So I haven't heard anything. Like I don't know if he's still like on
really.
Yeah.
So they got out of Russia. Then I take it because Russia's not a big golf.
Yeah. But yeah, he's like a huge golfer.
Again,
that was 6 years ago when he was like coming up through the younger ranks. So
interesting.
Yes. So side note. So just to kind of keep the conversation flowing. I think you're going to have older guards of women's athletics that are obviously upset at what it takes younger people, especially younger women, to get their NIL money or to get their social media money compared to that of men. But doesn't this fall onto the NCAA a little bit? Because again, instead of just paying the athletes, the NCAA comes out and says like, well, we're not going to pay you, but you can go get what you want, no rules. And so now the NCAA has essentially created a system where like student athletes can sell their body, like can sell their image, can sell their good looks. Like I just don't understand how I'm not going to call out the Stanford coach for after all her diligence of trying to help women's rights. And then for her to look at that and be like, that's what I just spent 3 decades of my life for. I spent 3 decades of my life so that an individual has to like take a picture with barely anything on. No. Do you get what I'm saying?
Not has to. She can. I don't think women's basketball had anything to do with this society.
But to make what the men make, like she's not. Let's put it this way: she is not getting Armando Bacot money.
But she's not as good as Armando Bacot, I assume. Maybe she's Olympian for all I know. I don't.
What do you think an NIL person for North Carolina makes? Like, what do you think the 7th best basketball player for North Carolina gets in NIL money?
Well, and
I bet you
it's a valid point.
Yes.
But there's so much more money in men's college basketball than there are. You give me the 5th kid at Duke. He makes more than the #1 field hockey player in all the country. Because there's no money in field hockey. Nobody cares. Okay. The #1 collegiate tennis player, like that guy can go pro or that girl can go pro and make money. But you can only make money in industries where there's money.
Okay.
If you're the greatest rock, paper, scissors player in the world, you're not going to make any money at it because there's no money in it.
I think I agree a ton with what you're saying. I think my disagreement comes from I would love to be able to talk to, what's her name?
Tara Vandermeer.
I would love to be able to talk to her and ask her, is this really about the individual or is this about what the individual has to do?
I know someone who knows her.
Up with the men. Yeah, I bet you do. And that would be my question. Because if it's about what she has to do, I can see how she would be terribly frustrated and it makes a ton of sense to me.
But here's the thing. Hold on. Now I'm going to pull this up. Because I am going to read because that's probably important.
Is it her statement?
It says is slammed by top coach. Cheese and rice.
You got to learn how to prep for this.
Where did it? I had it up. This is what happened.
This is the part of the show where I don't get enough credit.
I started. Shut up.
Prepping this
I started
stuff
scrolling through to see how racy the pictures were. Visit our pro. Oh God bless America. I'm not going to be able to pull it up. But here's the thing. It says the headline says slammed by the top coach. Now we've learned from the internet.
Spell her name real quick.
I just lost it. Dunn. Olivia Dunn. Olivia with an O, I think. LSU gymnast. Shut up. So anyway, I was going to make a point. Oh, well, here's the thing. And again, as I've said, just because the headline says slammed by the coach, right, we've learned from internet headlines that's not always accurate.
Correct.
But I can understand why Tara Vandermeer is complaining a little. I don't understand very much, but I understand a little. But if the girl who's making the $2 million get taken in her gymnastics leotard and in bathing suit pictures, if she's not complaining, then why should old coach be all up in arms about a system that is unfair when the person who is supposedly being exploited by the system thinks it's great because she's making $2 million taking Instagram pictures?
Well, the interesting thing is, like, you used the word sexualized earlier. And what's interesting is she's not being sexualized because of what other people are doing. She's essentially sexualizing herself to create a profit off it. Here's the quote. I guess sometimes we have the swing pendulum where we maybe take 2 steps forward and then we take a step back. We're fighting for all the opportunities to compete, to play, to have resources, to have facilities, to have coaches, and all the things that go with Olympic caliber athletics. She added, this is a step back.
Why? Why is it a step back?
I
would argue all publicity is good publicity, and that's a little bit of that's the saying.
Sure,
it's a little bit of a stretch, as people like Harvey Weinstein and Kevin Spacey would tell you that all publicity is not good publicity.
Yeah.
But now people know in America. What? You know what everyone knows in our listening audience?
What?
That LSU has a gymnastics team.
Well, I knew LSU.
No, you didn't. Not every gymnastics is dying sport.
I didn't know that LSU has
There's a lot of schools that don't have gymnastics.
The SEC has gymnastics.
No, I bet you're wrong.
I bet I'm right. Despite Vanderveer's criticism, Dunn told the Times the social media strategy has allowed her to earn a larger salary than what focusing on sports alone would have gotten her. 7 figures, she said, that is something I'm proud of, especially since I'm a woman in college sports. There are no professional leagues for most women's sports after college. So that was her quote in response back to her. Listen, I think I agree with 95% of what you're saying.
I know.
I think the question would just be, somehow I ended up defending the old head in this spot, which makes no sense at all. Because I support the LSU gymnast getting her money. I support her taking full advantage of the NIL. I would just say that I do think the NIL system has created it so that women's athletics are at a disadvantage as to how they're going to be able to go get the money versus the men. And I think that has made this conversation maybe something that didn't need to happen.
How many SEC schools do you think have gymnastics?
6.
8.
Okay. So the SEC has gymnastics.
Well, of course they do, because LSU's there and they have gymnastics. Okay, so but there's lots of schools. Let me just look.
Mark,
South Carolina doesn't. Neither of the Mississippi schools do.
Mark, does the SEC have gymnastics, yes or no?
Well, yes.
Okay, so that's I don't know.
No, this isn't. Hold on. Whoa. Rewind the tape. Can you read it back to me, Miss Stenographer? You said I knew LSU had gymnastics.
Yes.
And I said not every school has gymnastics. And you said I think
tell you how I knew.
How'd you know?
There was a viral video like 5 years ago. I bet you've seen it. There's a viral video of a gymnastics, and they go through this crazy routine with hip hop music, and it went viral. She has on a purple leotard. It's LSU Golden Tigers. I'm telling you.
Well, I also knew because I read this article that we've been talking about for 20 minutes.
And the SEC has gymnastics, so I don't know what we're arguing about.
No, because I said now everyone knows LSU has a gymnastics team.
Yeah, and
you said, of course LSU has a gymnastics team. But it's not, of course. Mississippi doesn't have one. Mississippi State doesn't have one. Tennessee doesn't have one. South Carolina doesn't have one. There are lots of SEC schools. Missouri does have one. There are lots of SEC schools that Auburn and Alabama both do. Georgia does. Texas A&M does not.
Uh-huh.
So there are lots of SEC schools that don't. So your statement of course LSU does.
Yes, there was a viral video. Of
But
course
that's-
LSU has gymnastics.
Now you're just throwing that in later.
I'm throwing
dumb.
it in later.
You're dumb.
No, it's a very good conversation. I wonder moving forward how they're going to, I don't want to say control NIL money, because I don't think you can control NIL money. I think now that you've opened up the floodgates, if someone wants to pay $3 million for someone to come in and hold up a lamp and say, like, come down to Larry's lamp shop, but like, you can't stop them, right? I think the interesting thing though is, I think what you're going to see more and more of is, I think you're going to, if you were able to do a study and you put all the men's NIL money and how it was spent sponsorship wise, and you took all the women's NIL money and you look and see, I would be fascinated, like, how many times did a male athlete do a sponsorship where they just had on their jersey or their uniform or something normal, versus a woman's athlete who maybe had to do it in a swimsuit or had to take a picture in like tight-fitting clothes. Like, I think that disparity could be a real problem moving forward into how women have to get their NIL deals versus men.
See, I think you're, and I'm not saying anything that you just said is wrong. I think you're looking at it way deeper than I am. I think on the women's side of life, way more than the men's side of life, the normal girls are way jealous of the pretty girls. And that's what I think. And that's what I think this is. I think it's a pretty girl who's cashing in on her looks, and the other people are mad.
Here's my dispute to that. I find it hard to believe that as a 70-something-year-old lady, that's how she views herself in society. I find it hard to believe that this coach for Stanford only sees the prism as she is pretty and that I am not. And I'm not saying there wasn't a point in her life where, I mean, I had a point in my life where it was like that guy's better looking than me. Like, maybe he'll get that girl. Like, I get that aspect of life. But what I'm saying is, like, the idea that this
is that how you grew up?
Don't interrupt. Don't try to interrupt my point.
Population of Blossburg.
Don't try to see. You're going to try to downplay my point with a corny joke. The idea that your point is this 70-year-old lady who's a Hall of Famer, and that's her prism of how this works, I just vehemently disagree with. Vehemently. There's no way that that's how she sees. You think that's how she views the world now? I think. Listen, I think it's how women have viewed the world forever. I think she can be jealous. Like, imagine how long it probably took her to make $2 million. Mm-hmm. And this girl just did it. So here's the point I'm making. I'm not saying there can't be like signs of jealousy. I'm saying the prism of whether or not, like, she's pretty and I'm not pretty now. So I'm going to call her out. No. I think there's trends of jealousy, but not about looks. This is not like I'm ugly, you're pretty, and I'm just like going after her. I disagree. You think, wait, your statement, hold on, I'm trying to replace in my head. Your statement was there are trends of jealousy amongst women, but it's not about looks. No. I'm talking about the coach for Stanford. You have a 7-year-old Hall of Fame coach for Stanford. She might be jealous that she made I mean, listen. I'm jealous that she made $2 million. What that coach had to come up through, like you said, she started in the 80s. What she had to come up through imagine how long it took her doing all the right things to make $2 million. Right. And now this person's able to take pictures and make $2 million. So the point, I'm like trying to help you out and say, I get that she could be jealous. I'm not going to sit here and say you're 100% wrong. There's no way this person is jealous. The point that I'm making is your prism of like ugly, pretty, ugly. I cannot imagine that is like the driving force behind this. I can't. I think there's a lot of other things that are driving her to make that statement. By the way, not right or wrong. Like, I'm not sitting here saying the statement was wrong, the statement was right. I'm saying the motivation behind it is way deeper than ugly and pretty. Way deeper. Well, I'm not, and I don't think I ever used the word ugly, but I think it's the cliquish, it's the plastics, it's the popular girls, and and the other ones don't. You know, like
when you go back to the school mentality and the school culture, and the big man on campus is, he's the starting quarterback, he's the leading scorer, he's the whatever, and he has all kinds of friends. And the prettiest girl, the homecoming queen, the plastics, what was her name?
Regina George.
Regina George has 2 friends. And that happens all the time. And obviously personality has a lot to do with it, and snobbiness has a lot to do with it. But you pick a high school and you walk in, and the most successful athlete on the guy's side is incredibly popular. The prettiest girl on the other side is not incredibly popular.
Yeah.
And I think it's the way women are wired to look at other women. I mean, you've heard, maybe you haven't heard the old saying because you're not as old as I am. When guys walk into bars, they look at women. Yeah. When girls walk into bars, they look at the other women to see who their competition is.
I get it.
And it's just the way men and women are wired.
I understand. I'm not saying that your basic dynamics do not apply in certain circumstances. What I'm saying is to apply it as the main driving force of this circumstance, I just disagree.
I think they apply in all circumstances.
No, because like what you're describing, this is an athlete who had to be good enough to do gymnastics at LSU. Like
she's obviously
she cannot
talented.
Be a bad athlete. Okay.
Nope.
You have someone who's coaching, and not at just like a state school. Like,
they've won national champions. She's a Hall of Famer.
At Stanford, too. At Stanford. Like, I would like to think that a Hall of Fame coach walking around at Stanford has deeper thoughts than the dynamics of high school athletes.
We would like to think that. Do you think, do we want to get into the deeper thoughts of all these elite coaches?
What I'm saying is I think she has way bigger motivators than the fact that that girl's really pretty and it bothers me. That's what I think.
Have you ever seen the women's lib rallies, the people who rally against beauty pageants? Have you ever seen J-Lo rally against a beauty pageant? No.
Yeah, but that's over there.
But it's the way it always is. There aren't.
So you think the points that I have brought up to you, like the things that could be driving factors for her to make these statements, is just
I don't think they're the driving factors. I don't think they are. And don't get me wrong. I'll go back to the original point. Society has sexualized women way more than men. It's the way it's always been.
I understand that.
I get it. And it's not fair. And I get all that. But there is no guy who was like this, journeyman character actor who's like, it's not fair that Brad Pitt makes $20 million a movie because he looks like Brad Pitt. But he does make $20 million a movie because he looks like Brad Pitt.
You don't think actors have said that before?
They don't.
You don't think Brad
Pitt come out and no, I've never seen an article where it says Paul Giamatti slams Brad Pitt because he's good looking.
You don't think there are supporting actors in the world?
Well, they're mad. Don't get me wrong.
Who at night with a drink in their hand are cursing the gods that Brad Pitt's as good looking as
all of them are. I get it, but not publicly. But not publicly, and they're not shaming like who's a good young looking kid, a young good looking actor. There's no.
I agree with you that she picked the wrong example. Like, to just pick a really good-looking gymnast from LSU certainly works against her.
It looks petty as all get out.
I agree. But when you read the statement and you start thinking about what it would mean to be her, and then all of a sudden see that happen, I'm just saying it's bigger than ugly pretty. It's bigger than the dynamics of high school.
If you're really in support of women collegiate athletes, shouldn't she be applauding this girl? Like she beat the system. This girl has won.
She beat the system, but even in the girl's statement, see, this is what's weird is you're making me like defend this.
I'm not making you do anything.
Yeah. Even in the LSU gymnast's statement, she says, this is, what did she say? Something about it's easier to make. I know. She said something along the lines of it. This isn't verbatim, but essentially she said, I can do this and make money. Getting better at gymnastics, I won't. Like she essentially
Correct.
said, if I work harder at this, I will benefit more than if I work harder at gymnastics. I think that's a very fair way of putting what she said.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine being a coach and your whole life, it's like, work harder than the men, work harder to do this, work harder to be better. And all of a sudden, here's someone coming out and saying like, well, actually, I'm not going to work harder at this thing. I'm actually going to work harder at just being pretty because it's going to make me money. I can understand why for her that would be a frustrating thing. No,
Thus equals jealousy.
Yes, but my point to you wasn't, I'm not saying this is not about jealousy. I'm saying to you that I don't think this is about the jealousy of attractiveness. I think this is about the jealousy of how hard you have to work. I think it's about jealousy of like, it took me 4 decades to do this and it took you 4 minutes. Like, I think this is about a different part of jealousy, not just like prom queen, quarterback, high school drama, like the typical attractiveness laws of like very basic high school. This is a deeper jealousy.
I don't know. I don't see, and I don't think the conversation's nearly as deep as you do, and that's where we disagree. I mean, part of what made Danica Patrick famous was that she was not ugly, and that she
had to be good enough to be on the track, though.
She was a talented driver, but part of the Danica allure was that she was in the swimsuit issue.
This is another example too. You and I have talked about NIL money and how it's going to change some stuff. Like some teams are magically going to rise to the top of some of this stuff. So here's what I would say. If you are this women's coach and you're at Stanford and you're watching a gymnast for LSU make $2 million, what is a point guard at LSU going to get? Right? Like all of a sudden now, if you're the coach at Stanford.
And this is a terrible thing to say, but it depends what she looks like.
I disagree because there's a lot of women's college basketball players who make decent NIL money. And like, it's not like they're what's the word?
Do they make $2 million?
What's that?
Do they make $2 million?
No, but her $2 million isn't all NIL. Some of it's social media, different things like that.
Fair.
So all I'm saying is if you're the coach at Stanford, and all of a sudden you're looking around and it's kind of like, well, wait a second. Like if these girls are going to be able to make these monies at different institutions, are they going to make more at Alabama or Stanford?
So you think part of it's because it hurt her job landscape?
What I'm saying is like this jealousy aspect is way more of a pizza pie than just like this one overwhelming thing. Like there are a ton of slices to this jealousy, and to act as if attractiveness is like the overwhelming number one. I'm not with you.
And you may be right. I grew up in an era where the women's libers bashed every beauty pageant on earth because it was just about the sexualization of women and it's holding women back. And that is all I hear when I hear this, that this 70-year-old female coach, who's a great coach and a Hall of Famer, is picking on this cute 20-year-old who just made $2 million or whatever she made.
I agree with you. She picked the wrong person.
I think it seems like Gloria Steinem all over to me.
Out of all the examples to use, to pick her was a unique choice. I agree with that 100%.
But I think in its uniqueness, it was an incredibly intentional choice. She didn't pick a girl telling jokes. She didn't pick a girl.
But that's it. You couldn't. Like you have to, this is the example you have to use if you're trying to make the point I think she's trying to make, which is that look at what women are going to have to do to get the same money that men are going to have to do. I know I'm taking it deeper than what you want it to be. I think there's a real Title IX conversation to be had around NIL money in the NCAA. And I know they're going to say the NCAA is
free market system.
Correct. The NCAA is going to say, well, we don't really control it. I understand that. But you're going to have a serious problem when women have to do one thing to get a fraction of the NIL money when men don't have to do that and get 4 times as much. It's going to be very, very interesting.
And granted, there are sports where, for example, we talk because we always look at the high-profile sports of football, men's college basketball, around here wrestling, because the Penn State wrestling is so high-profile. But women's gymnastics is way more high-profile than men's gymnastics. Women's figure skating has always been more prestigious than men's figure skating. So there are I'm sure there's guys on the LSU gymnastics team that are like, I can't make $2 million doing that.
Sure.
And I'm a guy. So the free market system certainly does come into play.
I would like to end with this because you kind of made me defend the other side by the
I didn't make you do anything.
Kind of. I can't express enough. If you are Olivia Dunn, get every dime.
God bless you.
Get every single dime you can get, regardless of what somebody else is going to say. But like I said to you earlier, I'm trying to think how I want to say this. If I were somebody who has made the choice that my advantage is not telling jokes and being funny or being the best in my sport, my advantage is my attractiveness, I would just understand that people who make these comments, because she's not going to be the last one. People are going to use you as the example. And so you're just like, be thick-skinned and go get your money because you should. You should get every dime that you can get. But I wouldn't be surprised. Like, you can't act surprised when that's what they're going to say. There's nothing that coach said shocked me, surprised me. I actually kind of could see where she was coming from. Like, I actually, in a way, can relate to what she is saying and see why she would be bothered by it. Pick a different person, not the right person. Pick something else. But I understand why the Stanford coach feels the way she feels. I really do. I think I can do both. Go get the LSU gymnast should get every dime she can.
Yes.
And I think the Stanford coach is not wrong.
I think you have to go to a depth to get to your conclusion about. I think it's shallow.
Well, no.
I don't think there's depth to this.
Nothing shallow about Stanford, is there?
Well, I would say
Stanford's one of the greatest institutions we have in the country.
Express. Well, it's not as good as if you're going to an SU, you want to go to Susquehanna and not Stanford. We've had that family discussion many times, you know. But
thank you guys for watching the Midday Show. Be sure to go to NorthcentralPa.com for all of your local news. And thank you to Weis Markets for being the title sponsor. Weis on the go. You can order it online. Go to weismarkets.com.
What do you got going on this weekend?
Well, the rain's kind of putting it. I was trying to get ready for winter is what I was going to
It's supposed to be gone tomorrow, though, right? It's just raining all day today.
Through the night.
Yeah,
so I think
but
it's going to be soggy tomorrow, obviously. But my hope was to just keep prepping for winter. First-time house owner, trying to get ready for winter, all those things. I'm learning a ton. Learning a ton.
Calling Dad a lot?
Yeah, no, I've had great conversations with him. It's been good. And it is like a lot of YouTube videos, a lot of like, this sounds really stupid. I've never had to care about prepping for like a winter.
Right.
Like it's, you know.
Well, see, you, and because of your age, so you can just kind of YouTube video. I was at the age where I'm calling my dad, and my dad was walking me through the apparatus in the top of the toilet and he's like, and he's doing it from memory, and I'm looking at it. He's like, do you see this part? Yes. Right. Do you see this part? So yes, because you and I and my dad and your dad are very similar in that situation. There's lots of knowledge base that they have that we didn't get any of.
Correct. Yes.
So,
but what's neat is I'm enjoying figuring it out. I think for a lot of people it would be frustrating or annoying or like, oh, I got to do this thing. I actually, when I figure something out, it is like a dopamine hit. Like I kind of get excited that like I accomplished that and I figured it out. So it's almost like a new hobby in a weird way, like a new thing. I feel achieved when I'm done.
Well, and don't you think with all of that stuff, when it's something new and you realize it wasn't nearly as hard as I thought it was going to be?
I agree.
So either you feel good that there's an aspect of I didn't fail at it, or maybe I'm a little smarter than I gave myself credit for or whatever.
Yeah.
But yes, I think there's that.
Yeah. The failing part's never bothered. I'm weird. Like I'll fail. Like there was I don't think I told you this. A couple weeks ago, dishwasher was leaking, right? Went out onto the floor. And so in about an hour, I had figured out what was wrong, got some thread tape, fixed it up, right? We had a friend come over and I was under the sink and I'm doing stuff. And she's like, I didn't know you knew how to do that stuff. And I said, I don't. Like, I have no clue. And she's like, how did you know how to fix it? I said, because I wasn't afraid for it to get worse. Because what I did was I turned it back on. I watched it flush the water in. I tried to find where the water was coming out from. And so in order to fix it, I had to let it get worse first, which goes against every.
Well, I've said that. See, both you and Jerry are wired like that. And it is a very it's a very admirable trait to have.
It can get you in trouble.
Well, I get that.
It can get you
But
in
you
trouble,
guys'
for sure.
ability to kind of like dive into things, because I'm one of these. I'm afraid I'll make it worse,
Right.
and then I have to go get help from somebody to make it worse, or to bail me out. And you, the people who have that self-assuredness of, no, I'll just try it.
Yeah.
And is a very fortunate.
I'm just self-assured that I'm not the only one. And I feel like that gives me enough oomph to like try, if that makes sense.
That you're like in this state, like I'm not the only idiot that doesn't know how to do this.
There's no way I'm the only idiot who doesn't know why this is.
I've never thought of it that way.
I mean, there's just no way.
So, I've never thought of it that way.
So
That's a good way to look.
Helps me kind of figure it out. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. Good luck with your winter preparation this weekend. Are you winter prepping? You're not winter prepping.
No,
you are in a way though. You'll probably do some stuff heading into the winter.
I mean, like the yard stuff, like all the yard furniture stuff has already been put away.
You're good.
So the outside, the plumbing has already been winterized.
You're good.
So yeah, there's not now. It's more of like what decorations are coming out and what aren't.
Oh, see, we're not big on the decorations yet. Maybe someday. We're not there yet.
I mean, we're not calendar-wise. Decorations are kind of a Thanksgiving.
Sure.
Over that time is when the Christmas stuff comes out, but that'll be the next step. All the outside stuff is done.
Yeah, we just don't have anything.
Well, that's because you're a Scrooge.
And it's just first time, so. Good luck with your lights.
Yeah. Well, they're not coming yet, but good luck staying dry.
I'll try. I'm Jeff Ever. He's Mark Messina. We will see you next week.
Later.